Siri weighs in. They think Hugh Freeze panicked and put the freshman in. I think that's what she said. I don't know. Hello and welcome in. It's always college football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy, and we appreciate you being with us here today. We love our Monday show. Today's the 10 things we've learned from the weekend that was week 4. I mean, I can't believe we're already through week 4. The season is flying by, but we're starting to figure out who some of these teams are. We're starting to find out who are some contenders, who are pretenders, and who are teams that are maybe just on the cusp of getting into the point where they're playing their best football. So we're going to dive into the 10 things we learned based on week 4's action. And there's a few things in here. Tennessee, Oklahoma, do have a little bit of a take for Ohio State and Ole Miss. You don't want to miss how we think the AP poll should look. We know what it is, but here's how it should be. We'll tell you that in today's show. Why a national championship contender might have emerged this weekend after being put and left for dead based on their week 1 performance. So we'll do a bunch of fun stuff today. So let's dive in right now with the 10 things that we found out this past weekend in college football. Takeaway number 1. I'm really trying not to be a prisoner of the moment. I'm really trying not to be. But I think Tennessee can win the whole thing. I really believe that. And based on this past weekend's performance, there was a lot of things I learned about this Tennessee football team. A lot. Yes, it wasn't the vintage, easy 50-plus point offensive outburst that we have become accustomed to seeing from the Tennessee Volunteers. But to go on the road in a hostile environment, in a game which the Sooner fans had circled, and to win the game by double digits, the first time Oklahoma's lost a double-digit home game since 2016. But I think the biggest thing I learned about this game was just how this program has matured. You know, because I think there was a time, and this is a little bit on Josh Heupel as a coach. He's an aggressive coach. That goes without saying. I think everybody that's watched Tennessee over the years knows that this is an aggressive team by nature, whether it's defensive pressures, taking shots downfield. Josh Heupel wants to ramp it up and apply the pressure. No doubt about it. But that's not what this game needed in order for the Volunteers to find victory. So I think what it showed me is that Josh Heupel understood and could get the temperature and could kind of sense how the game was being played. So as a result, he kind of checked his, I guess you could say, ego, his offensive ego at the door and said, you know what, we're fine playing field position. But guess what? If we punt the ball here, there's nothing wrong with that because we can just continue to flip the field with what Jackson Ross is doing. You look at the field position game, and they were in an amazing place all throughout the game. Hey, we're fine settling for 3 points here. In a game in which points could be at a premium, we're good kicking the field goal as opposed to going for it and potentially getting a touchdown. And then on the defensive side, remember, we've seen this team score. We know they can score. They're going to create big plays. But defensively, just a couple things to kind of wrap your head around. The Sooners had less than 100 yards of total offense heading into the fourth quarter. There were 2 different times in which Tennessee forced a turnover, one play after the Vols had turned it over. That's ridiculous. In a game in which momentum is just so huge, college football momentum is massive. For Tennessee to be able to flip it like that as often as they did, truly amazing. Their pass rush, relentless. Do you realize that the Sooners quarterbacks, both of them, were under duress on 22 of their 45 dropbacks? That's the highest pressure rate that Oklahoma has allowed in a game in the last 5 years. They couldn't make anything happen. And their offensive line wasn't just in pass pro, it was also in the run game. 16 of Oklahoma's 34 rushing attempts went for 0 or negative yards. Nearly half of their dropbacks were under pressure, and nearly half of their runs were tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. That's ridiculous. Joshua Joseph's couple forced fumbles, 3 turnovers forced on the night. Jermon McCoy had the interception in the first quarter, also broke up a big 4th down pass. You look at Jason Jenkins, who got into the act as well. I mean, it's not like the obvious ones like James Pierce, right? Like everybody knows James Pierce, but now you're getting on down the list and it's like, all right, hang on. There's a bunch of other playmakers in the front 7 here for Tennessee as well that maybe the national audience isn't that familiar with yet. But this is a deep group. This is a relentless group, and they showed it again last night. As far as Tennessee's offense is concerned, to go on the road and to win a game like that against a defense like that without both tackles at one point in the game, Lance Hurd was out. John Campbell got banged up in the game. It's pretty amazing. I thought Nico played fine. Thought he hit a couple big plays, and that's all it required. Made a couple nice runs with his legs, had a couple pivotal conversions. I feel great about where Nico's going. Like, he's not there yet. He's still a young player, but it would have been very easy for him to have a bunch of mistakes in a hostile environment. It would have been very easy for that to transpire. It happens. Guess what? Going on the road's hard, especially as a young quarterback. He didn't do any of those things. He was perfectly fine. They leaned on the run game. Their running game is amazing. I love how Sampson ran the ball. I mean, ran it with anger. He's an angry runner. That guy, he runs angry, and he made the defenders feel him all night long. Really, really impressive stuff. But I'm telling you, man, I think this Tennessee team, if they can continue to get growth at the quarterback spot, if they can get healthy along the offensive line, that's going to be big for them as well. If they can continue to harass opposing offenses and impact them in the pass rush and in their run defense and their run stops, this group can play with anybody in the country, and it would not surprise me at all if Tennessee ends up winning the national championship this year. They're that good, and they have progressed that much under Josh Heupel. Takeaway number 2. Oklahoma's defense left it all on the field, man. Like, that defensive effort was outrageously good. I mean, outrageously good. And what's amazing about this, and look, you always want what you always want what you don't have, right? You always want what you don't have. Well, what has Oklahoma had for the last 15 years? Super dynamic offense, right? Like under Lincoln Riley, under Bob Stoops, and really in the last couple of years under Brent Venables. They've been really dynamic offensively. But you know what they haven't had in a really long time? Maybe 2 decades? A defense like this. This might be their best defense that they've had since the early 2000s. I just feel bad that they couldn't really get any help from their offense whatsoever. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Jackson Arnold situation. We'll talk about that here in a moment. A couple takeaways from now. Speaking of takeaways, Tennessee had a bunch of them against Oklahoma's offense. It had to have been so demoralizing to see your offense play like that. Just for context, Tennessee came into that game having 2 punts and 1 3-and-out in their first 3 games. They also came into that game averaging about 64 points a game. Well, Oklahoma forced 8 punts, 4 3-and-outs, and allowed just 2 touchdowns. I mean, Robert Spears-Jennings for Oklahoma has been playing out of his mind through the first 4 games. It was incredible again this past weekend. Just an amazing performance, team leading and career high 13 tackles. He had 16 in the first few games, had 13 against Tennessee, had the first strip sack to set OU up at the 5-yard line. I mean, like, there's so much to like about what you saw from this Oklahoma defensive performance. But offensively, oh my goodness. Just to put things in perspective, okay? This defense, combined with any of the offenses that we saw from 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, this defense with those teams, national championship winner, no doubt about it. But isn't it amazing how the team's kind of like a scale, right? And this is not exclusive to Oklahoma. This is big picture college football. Like if you lean all in on the offense, your defense will suffer. Well, you lean all in on defense, your offense will suffer. And that's what's going on right now with the Oklahoma Sooners. To put things in perspective, let me just sum up the second quarter offensively for Oklahoma. The Sooners had negative 20 yards in 5 possessions. None exceeded 3 plays. There were 2 3-and-outs, 2 lost fumbles on the opening play of drives, as well as a safety given up on the first play of another drive where they were backed up. Oklahoma had 12 plays in the quarter and did not have a positive gain until their 10th snap. That is insane. Absolutely insane. Now, like I said, we'll talk about the quarterbacks in a minute, but it's a bummer that Oklahoma's been banged up. Nick Anderson restrained his quad. Deion Burks missed time and is out in the game. Taylor Tatum left. And then Kendall Dolby, who, man, that was an awful injury. It just, gosh, I hated that. Absolutely hated that. Dislocated ankle there in the second quarter. Emotional exit. Teammates gathered all around the cart. So just hoping for a fast recovery for Kendall Dolby. So fingers crossed. Man, that was awful. But just a big picture takeaway with Oklahoma and for all of college football. If you want really, really good defense and your team goes all in on that, your offense might suffer and vice versa. So I just feel bad that they finally, for Oklahoma fans, have the defense that they've always wanted. And now the offense is just not playing good football. Takeaway number 3, Michigan can still pound you. That's right. Are you allowed to say that this game was a throwback if Michigan quite literally didn't throw? I mean, that's I think, a fair question. Now, Michigan, over the last several years, they are 43-4. Okay? Pretty impressive. All right? We have seen on many occasions them having that critical short yardage conversion running the football. We have seen on many occasions them going over 200 yards on the ground. All right. We have seen on many occasions in which the passing game was kind of bottled up. And they've only had 8 300-yard passing games in those 47 games that I just described. All right. But no team has more rushing touchdowns in the last 4 years. And no team at the Power 4 level seemingly plays with this level of toughness and commitment to the line of scrimmage. All right. This is a team that was outgained 180-6 in the third quarter. They did not get a first down on their first 5 drives of the second half. Michigan had a comfortable lead after a really impressive first half. But this is a team that still was able to score points in the midst of an awful offensive performance in the first 28 minutes of the second half. Will Johnson's pick 6 was massive. All right, massive. You have Donovan Edwards' fumble. You got the go-ahead touchdown that was then scored by SC. It was pretty clear that at that point, man, this Michigan team, they're just not built to come from behind. They're not. Like, they're a team that has to play with the lead. So this is a difficult spot for them. And then Khalil Mullings, boom, 63 yards to start that 89-yard drive. 10 plays, 8 runs to go right down the field to score on 4th and goal with 37 seconds left. The offensive line looked improved. And I think the turnovers, which have been the story for Michigan up to this point, they were a thing of the past. Now, while, yeah, okay, they threw for 32 yards. Their fewest passing yards in the game since October 31st of 1987. So in my lifetime, I was born in 88, in May of 88, we have never seen a Michigan passing performance that was this bad. But it doesn't matter. They won the game. They didn't really manufacture a lot of big plays either. They averaged 4.6 yards per completion. That's their lowest yards per completion in any game in Michigan history. Their previous low was back in 1951 when they averaged 4.8 yards per completion against Michigan State. The good news is they have a bell cow back now in Khalil Mullings, who was really physical, just continuing to pound away, 230 pounds, and it just took time and time and time again. But we also, on the other side, got the defense that we were expecting. If you look at how Michigan has defended people this year, it has not been great. The pass rush hasn't been as consistent. Well, that wasn't the case this past weekend because I don't know what got into that defensive line, but that was the group that we expected all season long. They were constantly harassing Miller Moss. They held the Trojans to 118 total yards, 3 points, and negative 16 rushing yards in the first half. They were just 1 for 7 on third down in the first half. Josiah Stewart, who right now is playing as well as anybody along the front, had a couple sacks. Will Johnson had the pick 6. Zeke Berry did some really nice things, tackling in the open field. So I look at this Michigan team, man, and that's the defensive performances that I would come to expect. Now, SC kind of figured it out. We'll talk about them in a second. They're in the second half, but man, that Michigan, that felt like a vintage Michigan performance, didn't it? Ground and pound, great defense, winning the line of scrimmage. And hey, you might know what's coming, but it doesn't matter. You can't stop it. Takeaway number 4. USC, I hate moral victories. Oh, I hate them, but you have to give credit where credit is due. And USC is light years better than last year. Okay. Everybody was wondering. I was wondering. SC fans were wondering. People throughout the country were wondering, will SC be able to go toe-to-toe against the Big Ten teams that want to live and die along the lines of scrimmage? Okay. I think we all were wondering that. And guess what? I don't know if I came out of it now thinking, all right, SC's perfectly capable winning a dogfight in the trenches. I still don't think they're built to play that way. I don't think they want to play that way. But if that's the way the game goes, they won't wither the way they did in years past. Now, you think about last year. You take that 2023 team and you put them on the road against this Michigan team, I think they lose the game by 3+ touchdowns. Seriously. There was a point in this game in which D'Anton Lynn's defense did not allow a first down for 28 minutes. Not a first down. Now, you look at the first half, it wasn't great. Michigan ran for 199 yards, had a couple big runs, 7.5 yards a carry there in the first half. Well, the fourth quarter, also not very good. They had 96 yards in the fourth quarter alone. Of those 96, 84 of them came on the ground. But this team was up to the test. Now, you also have to acknowledge Miller Moss. I think we all learned about his toughness in the game. I mean, he was hit over and over, and countless times. The guy got hit. Felt like every time he dropped back, he had a Michigan guy in his face, and he was getting hit. I mean, whether it was in the red zone or kind of all throughout the game, he was just getting pounded. So you got to admire his toughness, but you also have to admire SC's capabilities and improvements on the defensive line. The other thing I'd say too, and it's not often when I say this, I thought the part of this game that was most disappointing from USC's perspective was the offensive play calling. And honestly, I look and I think Lincoln Riley is as good of an offensive mind as there is in college football. I don't think there are very many people that can dial it up better than he can. But there were a couple times in the game where I felt like I wanted him to press the gas pedal. Now, I wanted him to be more aggressive. It was almost as if, and look, hindsight's 2020. I mean, they had the lead in a 4th and goal situation with 30 seconds left. All right. So they were in a really good spot and they were this close to going on the road and beating the defending national champs in a gotta have it situation for the defending champs. So acknowledging completely that maybe he thought he had enough on defense or that maybe Michigan didn't have anything on offense to just win the game. But there were times where I felt like they could kind of rev the engine a little bit more. There were a few times it felt like SC was playing not to make a mistake offensively, as opposed to, hey, we're going straight for the jugular and we're going to go after him. I think we look at it too, and especially the worst, I guess the second to last drive, right? SC has a chance to kind of put this thing on ice. All right, they have the ball. 5 minutes left in the game, and they're in a position where, hey, a couple first downs, and boom, we're out of here, boys. Well, you get Woody Marks, 2-yard gain on first down. And then you have the false start. When there were a couple penalties in this game too, where just, man, they were back-breaking penalties, it felt like, for SC. All right, false start. And then you have a couple shovel pass attempts to Woody Marks. Neither one were caught, meaning incomplete passes, which means stop the clock. That drive ate up 59 seconds. And that's including the punt. So I do think of all the things in this game, the most disappointing thing for SC was that their offensive play calling left a little to be desired, but that's not something I'm traditionally going to worry about with the Lincoln Riley coach team. What I would worry about, perhaps, is how they'd hold up defensively along the front seven, and they passed that test, I thought, in many ways, with flying colors based on where they were last year. Now, takeaway number 5. The AP poll is the AP poll. Okay, I hear a lot of people just constantly discrediting the AP poll. Like, I was listening to Joel Klatt. I really like Joel. I think he does a nice job, and he's just crushing the AP poll. It's like I don't put a lot of stock into it. The AP poll is as important as you want to make it. Okay, so if you hate it, like Joel, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. If you love it, like people associated with the poll, that's fine too. I kind of lie somewhere in between. I think it serves its purpose. I think it creates some dialogue, but it's completely unnecessary. And I take it with a grain of salt. Because a lot of the AP poll, they are building in preseason expectations and not reality. And there is oftentimes a significant overreaction to a poor performance. A la Clemson, right? Clemson started the season, I believe, 14th and got beat by a really good Georgia team, even though they were in the game there for the better part of 30 minutes. And they almost fall out of the top 25. Now they're back in now, right? And everyone's all is right in the world. More on Clemson in a minute, but that was a pretty significant overreaction. Now the top 5 is the top 5, but here's what it should be. Right now, based on what we've seen up to this point, here's what the top 5 should be. Texas should be 1. Georgia should be 2. Texas beat Michigan. Georgia beat Clemson. Number 3 should be Tennessee. Tennessee beat Oklahoma. They're not number 3, but they should be. They beat Oklahoma, I think, in pretty convincing fashion. 4 should be Alabama. Alabama beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin and did so convincingly. 5 should be Miami. You say, well, hang on a second. They beat Florida. Miami's been cruising, guys. And Miami is on fire. You're going to say, well, hang on a second. What about Ohio State? What about Ole Miss? I'm sorry. I cannot, at this point, in good conscience, put Ohio State and Ole Miss in the top 5. Just because of where I had them in the preseason, I love both those teams, by the way. And guess what? In victory against quality competition, which will be coming, they will be ranked accordingly. But as of this moment, we now sit through 4 weeks of college football, and Ole Miss's best win is against Wake Forest. No disrespect to Wake Forest, that to me means that Ole Miss's evaluation is still incomplete. So I would have Ole Miss, I would have Ohio State outside the top 5 right now. I would. And when they win against good teams, which they will, then they can be ranked accordingly. But here we are, guys, and this is where we're at now in college football, and it is what it is. Like, you have 2 bye weeks. Some teams haven't played. Some teams have. Some teams haven't played anybody. You have terrible non-conference competition. So you just steamroll through, folks. I mean, we're going to find out about Ole Miss this week. Like, they'll get Kentucky at home. I think Kentucky's a top 30, top 35 team. I know they're 1-2. I think they're pretty good, though. I think they're well coached. I think they have good personnel. I think they have pros on both sides of the ball. Maybe this is the week we find out about Ole Miss. But right now, it is impossible to get a gauge on how good Ole Miss and Ohio State are based on the level of competition. Soon we'll find out. But we're just not there right now. Takeaway number 6. It's time to buy stock in little old Clemson. And remember, Dabo Swinney said this last year on the heels, I believe it was a win against Notre Dame. They were 4-4 at the time. They beat Notre Dame. All of a sudden, they're 5-4. And he said, if Clemson's a stock, you ought to buy it right now. Well, yes, Clemson did not look good in their first game against Georgia in the second half. That's an important caveat because everyone looks at the final score and they say, oh, well, Georgia won the game by 31 points. Totally accurate. That happened. Won't push back on that. I called the game. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I saw it. But I did see a Clemson team that battled for the better part of the first 30 minutes. I also saw a Clemson team that was way too conservative. If you're playing Georgia, man, you got to throw haymakers. Like, if you're going to try to beat them in a tug of war, they're probably going to beat you. But if you all of a sudden want to start, taking shots downfield and trying to challenge one-on-ones, and you're going to be aggressive by pushing it downfield, that's how you're going to beat Georgia. You can't beat Georgia by going 4 or 5 yards in a cloud of dust. They're too talented. So you're going to have to create chunk yardage. And guess what? Man, after week 1, Clemson went back to the drawing board and they said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We are now going to start taking shots. Like, who cares? If we go down, we're going down swinging. We're going to start airing it out. We're going to use quarterback run. We have talented wide receivers with speed. We're going to just try to throw it over people's heads and let's just see what happens. Well, you know what's happened the last couple of weeks? It happens against Appalachian State, and you're like, oh, it's Appalachian State. Happens against NC State, you're like, all right, hang on a second. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. People are starting to get on board. This is the first time that Clemson has scored 45 first-half points in consecutive games under Dabo Swinney. To win 66-20 and 59-35 against Appalachian State and NC State, respectively, is pretty impressive. And that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story because the 20 points scored by Appalachian State, most of which came against reserves. And the same can be said about 35 points that NC State scored. Now, Clemson was up 28-0 in the first quarter, forced a couple turnovers. Cade Klubnik, I think, is playing his best football. And sometimes it just takes a little time, right? Like Cade Klubnik, as a young player last year, the expectations were sky high. And guess what? It's hard to play quarterback in the Power 5. It's hard. You got to be really good. You got to be really, really good. And even though you have talent, doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to have great production. Well, he's always had talent, but now he's starting to understand and see the bigger picture. So I've been very encouraged by what I've seen from him. I also think that he's more comfortable in Garrett Riley's offense. And I also think Garrett Riley is finally starting to say, you know what, forget about it, guys. We got good weapons. We're going to take our shots and let's just go after them. And it's really been impressive to watch. I think Clemson's going to be around. You look at their schedule. All right. Their toughest game remaining is probably Louisville at home. Maybe it's South Carolina with what South Carolina has defensively. Maybe it's at Florida State, even though I don't think that game's going to be as challenging as I would have told you it was going to be in the preseason. So there are a couple challenging games left, and you certainly don't want to get too far in front of you, but to think that you're going to lose at home feels unlikely. I think Clemson's lost like 2 games at home in 20 years or however many it's been. So they haven't lost a lot at home, that's for sure. But they also, on the road, I don't think it's too terribly difficult. Clemson might fast forward to the end of the year and they're 11-1 and heading to the ACC title to play against Miami. So I think Clemson, they got to keep winning impressively because they are going to need some style points in the event in which they don't win the ACC. But so far, so good in the response from the game and the outcome against Georgia in week number 1. Takeaway number 7. Let's play a little game, all right? Let's play a little game. Panic or patience? And we're going to play for Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and we are going to play with Auburn as well. Panic or patience? And this time it's going to be quarterback driven. All right? Oklahoma, we'll start there. We already talked a little bit about Oklahoma earlier in the show. Jackson Arnold, 5-star, was anointed the starting quarterback at the end of last year. Dylan Gabriel transfers out, assuming that Arnold was going to be the guy. They said, all right, go ahead, Dylan. You're good. We got this guy. He's going to be amazing. Well, so far, he's 5 starts into his career. And it's not so much that he isn't making plays, because there are some times where he's done some nice things with his legs in particular. There have been some nice throws at times. But you can't win turning the ball over. Turn it over 3 times against Arizona. Turn it over 3 times, Saturday against Tennessee. I mean, to have 3 first-half turnovers, interception, couple of fumbles lost, you can't climb out of that hole. It doesn't matter how good your defense is. You cannot make mistakes like that. The other thing is they're not really hitting a lot of throws downfield. And this is an offense that really needs the big play downfield to reach its ceiling. And Jackson Arnold right now, 2 for 17 on throws that travel 15 or more yards downfield. That's just not going to get it done. When you're completing 12% of throws that travel 15 yards or more downfield, that's just not going to get it done. So you got Michael Hawkins, and you got to respect how he played. Coming off the bench, difficult situation, most meaningful playing time he's ever received, just his 2nd career appearance against a team that is a national championship contender, one of the best defensive lines in the sport, one of the best defenses in the sport, and he actually found a little rhythm. There were some flashes in that performance there in the 4th quarter. Plus, you know how many teammates he won over by those 2 near touchdown runs? They were both called scores, of course, and were reviewed and taken off. But the second one where he's airborne and flipping and somersaulting into the end zone, body on the line, that's how you gain the respect of your teammates. So the big question, time to panic or patience with Oklahoma and their quarterback situation? I think it's time to panic, because what I've seen from Jackson Arnold, he's not playing winning football right now. He's just not. Maybe the weight of the world is just too heavy on his shoulders right now. Maybe he's trying to do too much. And I think he presses for sure. And it appears from a distance like he kind of gets down on himself in the event in which he faces adversity. Can't have that. You got to go with Michael Hawkins based on what I saw this most recent week. Now, Michael Hawkins, you might have a short leash on him at some point, but right now it's panic time at the quarterback spot at Oklahoma. And he's not alone. They got a lot of issues on offense, especially on the offensive line. Let's go to Oklahoma State. This was a panic move, by the way, in my opinion. Like, watching this game. Now, did Alan Bowman have his best stuff? No. I didn't think he was playing very well, but you're down 7. And you're going to bench the guy that has played 7 years of college football. And Gundy said after the game, quote, sometimes we don't do it a lot here, but sometimes you got to get a guy out of there and calm him down a little bit. So I don't know what was going on necessarily, the interaction, and I don't know their reads and their processes. I didn't think like Bowman's start warranted a benching. You put in Rangel, who has played a little bit, didn't play very well. He finishes 3 of 11 for 31 yards in 4 drives. Put Bowman back in the game. That leads to back-to-back touchdown drives. He did throw an interception, but he finished the game 16 to 33 for 206, a couple touchdowns and 2 picks. You got to have patience. Like, Bowman's your guy. Okay? Bowman's your guy. And I think he responded to the benching pretty well, but it did feel like a quick hook for a guy that is really the sole reason why you were 3-0 heading into that game in the first place. And then finally to Auburn. Panic or patience? This one's panic, but it should have been patience. Now, Hugh Freeze has benched multiple quarterbacks in the last 4 games. Here's the issue. If you watch the game played by Peyton Thorne a couple weeks ago against Cal, yes, you look at the box score. You see 4 interceptions, you say that's just not good football. Then you watch the game itself and you watch the plays. And you look at the first interception where a receiver didn't run through his route on the slant. It hits off his hands. It's intercepted. The second interception was rolling, trying to make a play, moving in the pocket because your offensive line hadn't blocked a soul all day. You're trying to make a play, your arm gets hit, up in the air, gets intercepted. The third interception, you try to throw a back shoulder down the left sideline, and the corner plays it perfectly, but the receiver just kept running, didn't really stop or try to make a play on the ball. Then the fourth interception, you're backed up trying to make a play with 30 seconds left, down a touchdown. Well, Auburn panics. They put in Hank Brown, who at this point, he lit up New Mexico, who at the time was the worst defense in the sport. And it was not good when he started to see real capable defenders on the other side. Through the interception, all right, and then things really spiraled for him. He went 4 of 10 the rest of the way, 2 more picks. One of the interceptions was right at Jaden Johnson, the safety, and he just stared it down the whole way. And then there was, you got Robert Lewis wide open underneath, airmails, another one. Like, Hank Brown was never going to be the answer, I don't think, with this Auburn team. The offensive line's just not good. The offensive line's not playing good football. So you got to have a guy with some mobility. And Peyton Thorne is that guy. Now, the fan base was frustrated by him, sure. But I think Hugh Freeze should have stuck with him from the jump. Instead, he puts in the freshman. He's great against subpar competition. And boy, did he come back to earth in a big way. Siri just chimed in there. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm not sure how, but Siri just chimed in. Should have probably had my phone on, I guess, do not disturb. Siri weighs in. They think Hugh Freeze panicked and put the freshman in. I think that's what she said. I don't know. Anyways, this situation could have been avoided, but it wasn't. And I think it was a panic move to put Hank Brown in to begin with. And now it's super panic move to put him back in there. Now you got 2 quarterbacks with fractured confidence. So we'll see what happens with Auburn. But my goodness, they got Oklahoma coming to town. And the get-right recipe for their quarterbacks to play against that defense, good luck. That's going to be a tough situation. Takeaway number 8. Utah is basically the Big 12's version of Michigan. Aren't they? No matter what, it's like every time you see, it's like Utah. You know what? No problem. We'll win 8 games with an anemic offense last year. It's no problem. We'll figure it out. We'll go on the road against a ranked foe, one of the favorites in the Big 12 with our backup quarterback, and we'll handle our business. It's like Utah never ceases to amaze me how good Kyle Whittingham is. The team makes no excuses ever. They just go out and they just take care of their business. And it's like, hey, you know what? Cam's out today, boys. Micah, we're going to need you to step up. Micah Bernard, what a performance. To carry the ball 25 times for 182. The last 4 carries he got were maybe the most important to put the game on ice. He broke tackles like crazy. He was really patient. I thought he was rock solid in pass protection. That was a heck of a performance. All right. Your quarterback's young. He's a young player on the road. Like, you're going to have to take the pressure off of him. So you do it by feeding your running back, Micah Bernard, who responded in remarkable fashion. And how about the defense? Just 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. Okay. It wasn't really until Oklahoma State kind of got into that 2-minute, hey, we need to go. No, we need to play with a little urgency there in the fourth quarter, that Utah's defense looked human. They looked like a brick wall for 53 minutes, thereabouts. You couldn't do anything. They forced 6 3-and-outs. Absolutely ridiculous. They had Oklahoma State fans turning on their own team. They're booing. They are booing their own offense. It was a ridiculously strong performance. Now, to hold Oklahoma State to less than half their scoring average, to allow just 48 rushing yards, to allow less than 300 yards of total offense, to force 2 turnovers, and the second one obviously leading to what was ultimately the game-winning touchdown. It was just an outrageously good performance. Here's what I like about Utah. and they're one of my favorite programs just from a distance. You guys know me. I like all college football teams, but there's just some with just an elevated level of respect. Utah is one of those. And here's what I love about them. Is never going to make excuses. They're never going to look or come across as feeling unprepared. They're always going to at least attempt to be the most physical team. Like when you play Utah, it's going to be a 4-quarter fight. Even if the game gets sideways against them, they're still going to fight to the end. I really admire this team. And hey, here's hoping that Cam Rising can be back so we can see the best version of Utah. But they just always seemingly find a way to win. And you got to have a ton of respect for a team like that and a coach like Kyle Whittingham that always has his team ready to go in a scenario like that as well. Takeaway number 9. Colorado and the Big 12 are super entertaining. But are they actually good? Like, that's a real question to me. Like, I look at Colorado, and I think Colorado has great individual talent. Okay? Now, great individual talent can sometimes be very different than that of being a team that is actually great. Now, I think Travis Hunter's amazing. The guy's ridiculous. Okay, he has another 100-yard game through the air, his 4th 100-yard game to start the season. And then he puts the game on ice by forcing a fumble in overtime that gets fumbled out of the back of the end zone. According to ESPN stats and information, he's the first player to have more than 100 yards receiving and force a fumble in the same game in the last 20 years. So he's amazing. He's an amazing player. I think Shador's amazing. I think the weapons are amazing. I think they actually have a couple guys on defense that are outstanding. But I just don't know how good they are, And had they lost this game to Baylor, it would have been, I'm not going to say unforgivable. But if you look at where Colorado is right now, if they want to get to bowl eligibility, which is the goal, right? They want to get to the postseason. They want to win their 6. And we in the first 2 or 3 shows of this season, like dating back to July, we went through and we looked at Colorado's prospects of getting to the postseason. There were 3 gotta-have-its, one of which was Baylor, because Baylor's not expected to be a great team this year. They had to have that one. It was at home. If they lose that one, it's very unlikely they get to the postseason. They had to have North Dakota State, had to have Colorado State. So they got the 3 that they had to have. They had 4 50-50 games. They've lost one of those already. That was the road game at Nebraska. So they had to have this one, and they found a way to make it happen on a Hail Mary. So I think this is a positive step for Colorado, because there were times last year it looked like this team, I don't know, first sign of adversity. Yeah, the Oregon game comes to mind. It's like they kind of mailed it in. Like this year, no, man, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep throwing shots, and hopefully we land one. And they did. Now, it was terrible defense by Baylor on the Hail Mary, but I digress. Colorado is 1-0 in the Big 12, 3-1 overall, and it was a game they absolutely had to have if they wanted to keep their postseason hopes alive. As far as the Big 12 is concerned in general, you look at the preseason favorites, Oklahoma State, K-State, they both sit right now at 0-1 in the conference. Kansas, another team that was among the highest rated favorites, and according to Vegas, they're 1-3. They've yet to beat an FBS team this year. Arizona's 2-1. They lost convincingly to K-State. And then Kansas State, team that everyone thought was going to just run away with the Big 12 potentially. Well, they get blown out at BYU late on Saturday night. Now, Utah, they're going to get Arizona, so we'll see exactly how things kind of line up there. But they still have games against BYU, who's currently undefeated, Iowa State, who's undefeated, and UCF, who's undefeated. So you look at the Big 12, and my goodness, it is an entertaining league. It is week to week, because the second you anoint a team like Kansas State, they disappoint you. We'll see what happens. Maybe Utah can continue on. Maybe BYU's for real. So we'll find out. We'll continue to watch. But man, I really like the Big 12. But I don't know at this point just how good the league is from top to bottom. Takeaway number 10. The G5 just can't have nice things right now. You know what I mean? Like, it did not take long to sit there and evaluate the G5 and think, man, the G5 this year, hey, this is a fun year to have the 12-team playoff. The G5, man, look at these upsets. Like, this is a fun year to have it. And then they all fall flat the following week. So the takeaway number 10, do we really have to give a playoff spot to a G5 team this year? And I say it tongue-in-cheek. Of course we're going to, and of course we should. But my goodness, can we get some consistency? Can we get some consistency? A week ago, we watched Memphis. We watched Memphis go to Tallahassee and handle Florida State, contain Florida State's offense. Florida State has guys on their offense that will play in the NFL, completely contain them. And then the following week, what does Memphis do? They give up 56 to Navy. You heard me right there. To shut down an offense with multiple NFL players on it, and then give up 56 to Navy the following week. Tell me how that makes sense. You're right, it doesn't. All right. How about Northern Illinois? We see him beat Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. Hey guys, Northern Illinois, the MAC is back, baby. Well, here comes Buffalo, and they knock them off. What about Toledo? Oh, Toledo goes to Mississippi State, beats them convincingly. Wow, that was big time. Toledo's rocking and rolling, man. Maybe Toledo and NIU. What a game that's going to be when they tee it up against each other in mid-October. Well, Toledo goes and loses to Western Kentucky just a week after they smack Mississippi State. Then you have situations like Boise, who gave Oregon all they wanted. UNLV, who I think is really good. James Madison, who probably could have scored 100 on North Carolina if they wanted to. I mean, just an absolute offensive clinic. And then Liberty, who's 4-0 after playing basically nobody. So the G5's wide open. I refuse to tell you right now who I think is the best G5 team, because I feel like the second I do that, they'll lose to a team they shouldn't lose to next week. But it is pretty fun because we're paying closer attention to the G5 this year than we ever have before, because we know one of those teams is going to the postseason. Just a matter of which one. And based on the up and down nature of that level right now, I'm not sure there's one I want to hitch my wagon to just yet. Thank you again for being with us here on a Monday edition of Always College Football. Encourage all of you guys to like, rate, and subscribe to the show wherever you get the show, whether that's on the podcast platform, Apple Podcast, Spotify. We appreciate those of you that have rated the show. Even those of you that have given us 1 star because you're mad at how the playoff committee did your team. I'm sorry about that, but we appreciate the ratings, because even though a 1-star rating is not good for our overall average, it's good for the algorithm. So we appreciate you guys very, very much. And we also appreciate all of you that are here with us via the ESPN YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. So for all of us here at Always College Football, we'll be back again on Wednesday with a great conversation about the week coming up. It's week 5, the last weekend of September. Maybe it's separation time for some of these teams, but that'll do it for us here. For Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.